They didn't just kill a man. They created a nightmare that would burn kingdoms to the ground. When Ragnar Lothbrok was thrown into a pit of venomous snakes, the king who ordered it believed the threat was over. He was wrong. Because Ragnar's death did not end the Viking era. It ignited the largest invasion force England had ever faced. An army built not for conquest, but for revenge. Within months, entire cities would fall, kings would beg, and Ragnar's sons would carve their father's name into history with blood and fire. This is the story of how one execution triggered the rise of the Great Heathen Army, and changed Europe forever. Ragnar Lothbrok was not supposed to die in chains. He was a symbol, a name whispered in fear across the coasts of Europe. To the Saxons, he was not a man. He was a storm. For years, Ragnar's longships had appeared without warning. Villages burned. Monasteries were emptied. Kings paid tribute just to keep their borders standing. But power creates arrogance, and arrogance creates mistakes. After years of victories, Ragnar believed the world had already learned his name. He believed fear alone could open gates. So he did something reckless. He sailed with only a small force. Not an army. Not a fleet. Just a handful of ships. Across the sea, in the lands of Northumbria, King Ælla was waiting. Unlike the kings Ragnar had faced before, Ælla did not hide behind tribute. He prepared traps. Scouts were placed along the coast. Soldiers were hidden behind forests and hills. When Ragnar's ships landed, there was no resistance at first. No warning. No alarm bells. And that silence was the trap. As Ragnar's men moved inland, Saxon forces surrounded them, not in open battle, but through ambush. Arrows fell from the trees. Steel came from the shadows. Ragnar's warriors fought back, but they were outnumbered. For the first time in years, Ragnar was forced to retreat. But fate was already closing in. During the chaos, Ragnar was separated from his remaining men, wounded, exhausted, alone. Local villagers discovered him near the riverbanks, not as a feared warlord, but as a broken survivor. They didn't recognize the legend. They only saw a foreign warrior. And they turned him in. Ragnar Lothbrok stood in chains beneath the cold stone walls of King Ælla's fortress. The wind moved slowly through the courtyard, carrying the smell of smoke, iron, and damp earth. Above him, banners of Northumbria hung heavy, symbols of power that Ragnar had once mocked with fire and steel. He was no longer standing on the deck of a longship, no longer commanding warriors, no longer feared by kings. Yet strangely, Ragnar did not look defeated. His shoulders were bruised. His armor had been stripped away. His hands were bound. But his eyes were calm. The Saxon nobles expected him to break. They expected a speech of desperation. They expected tears or rage. They received silence. King Ælla stepped forward, dressed in ceremonial armor meant to impress the crowd. He wanted this moment to be remembered, not only as justice, but as spectacle. For years, Ragnar had humiliated English kingdoms. Now Ælla wanted the world to see Ragnar humiliated in return. The decision had already been made. There would be no sword, no quick death, no mercy. Instead, Ragnar would be sent to the pit. Deep beneath the fortress lay a chamber carved from stone, cold, dark, and filled with venomous snakes collected for this purpose alone. It was not simply an execution method. It was psychological warfare. The Saxons believed fear mattered more than blood. As Ragnar was dragged forward, the crowd grew restless. Some shouted insults. Others watched in stunned silence. Children were lifted onto shoulders. Merchants closed their stalls to witness history. Priests whispered prayers. But Ragnar did not look at them. He looked toward the sky. According to the sagas, Ragnar laughed. Not loudly, not wildly, but quietly, as if he had already accepted the ending. He spoke one final message. Not to Ælla, not to the crowd, but to fate itself. He spoke of his sons. He warned that the snakes would not be the last creatures to taste blood that day, that wolves would soon cross the sea, that fire would answer fire. Ælla ordered the guards forward. The chains were removed. Ragnar was pushed toward the edge. Below him, the pit waited. Dark shapes moved in the shadows. The sound of scales sliding across stone echoed upward. Without ceremony, Ragnar was thrown. His body disappeared into darkness. The pit closed. What followed was not instant death. Venom burned through his bloodstream, muscles tightened, breathing became slow and painful. Yet Ragnar did not scream. That silence would become legend. When his body finally stopped moving, the crowd did not cheer. They stood quietly, unsure of what they had witnessed. Ælla believed he had won. He believed killing Ragnar would end the Viking threat. He believed removing the symbol would break the myth. He could not have been more wrong. Because the moment Ragnar died, something far more dangerous was born. The news traveled slowly at first. Merchants carried rumors across ports. Sailors whispered stories in taverns. Messengers crossed frozen landscapes. By the time the truth reached Scandinavia, it had grown larger than reality. Ragnar was not simply dead. He had been murdered, humiliated, thrown to beasts like an animal. In the halls of the north, the reaction was not sorrow. It was rage. Ragnar's sons did not gather to mourn quietly. They gathered to prepare war. Ivar the Boneless heard the news first. Unlike his brothers, Ivar did not explode with anger. He sat in silence. His mind was already working. He understood something others did not. This was not a moment for emotion. This was a moment for calculation. Bjorn Ironside reacted differently. He smashed his fist against the table. He demanded blood. He demanded immediate action. Ubi spoke of honor, of tradition, of duty to their father's name. Vitserk said little, but his eyes told enough. There was no debate about whether revenge would happen. The only question was how large it would become. Ivar proposed something radical. Not another raid, not another coastal strike. An invasion. He understood England's weakness. He understood its political divisions. He understood that multiple kingdoms existed under one island. Northumbria, Mercia, Wessex, East Anglia. They did not stand united. Ivar saw opportunity. If they moved fast, if they moved together, if they moved with overwhelming force, they could break England permanently. The brothers agreed. What followed was unprecedented. Messengers were sent across Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. Jarl halls filled with warriors. Smiths worked day and night forging weapons. Shipbuilders expanded fleets. Men did not come for gold. They came for Ragnar. The call spread like fire. Join the army. Avenge the fallen king. Cross the sea. Burn England. Within months, the largest Viking force ever assembled stood ready. The Great Heathen Army. Hundreds of longships gathered along the coast. Their sails darkened the horizon. Their hulls creaked under the weight of warriors and supplies. Never before had the Viking world moved as one. This was not a loose collection of raiders. It was organized, structured, commanded. Ivar took control of strategy. Bjorn handled military coordination. Ubi oversaw logistics. Vitserk maintained discipline among the younger warriors. They prepared for a long campaign. Food stores were loaded, weapons sharpened, rituals were performed. Priests called upon the gods. Warriors marked their shields with symbols of vengeance. Then the sails were raised. The sea swallowed the fleet. And England waited. The first landing. When the Great Heathen Army reached the English coast, panic spread. Villages emptied overnight. Church bells rang in warning. Local lords sent desperate messages to their kings. This was not the Viking threat they remembered. This was something larger. The army landed without resistance. Not because England welcomed them, but because England was unprepared. They marched inland with discipline rarely seen among Viking forces. This was not chaos. It was war planning. Their first target was Northumbria. King Ælla still ruled. The same man who had ordered Ragnar's death. York became the focal point. A strategic city, wealthy, defended, symbolic. The Vikings surrounded it. The Saxon forces attempted resistance. They failed. The walls were breached. The streets filled with fighting. The city fell. Northumbria collapsed in days. Ælla fled. But escape did not save him. He was captured, dragged before Ragnar's sons. Now the roles were reversed. No court, no ceremony, only judgment. According to legend, Ælla was executed using the blood eagle. Whether the ritual happened exactly as described remains debated. But what is certain is this: Ælla did not survive. Ragnar's death had been answered. The expansion of war. The Great Heathen Army did not stop. They moved south. Mercia fell under pressure. East Anglia submitted. Wessex fortified desperately. Kings offered tribute. Gold flowed into Viking camps. But the army was no longer motivated by wealth. They were building control. Settlements were established. Territory was claimed. Viking law replaced Saxon authority. For the first time, England faced the possibility of permanent occupation. The consequences reshaped history. Borders shifted. Languages mixed. Cultures collided. All because one execution was meant to send a message. Instead, it triggered a war that changed Europe forever. Ragnar's legacy. Ragnar's body lay forgotten in a pit. But his name became immortal. His sons carried it into battle. Warriors shouted it before charging. Enemies whispered it in fear. Ragnar did not conquer England himself. But his death created the force that nearly did. In the end, Ragnar achieved something greater than victory. He created a legend powerful enough to move armies. And long after the Great Heathen Army faded, the echo of that legend remained. In the ruins of old cities, in the bloodlines of kings, in the stories passed down for centuries. Because Ragnar Lothbrok did not die alone. He took the future with him. Ragnar Lothbrok never ruled England. He never sat on its throne. He never claimed its crown. Yet his shadow covered the island for generations. The Great Heathen Army eventually faded. Kingdoms rebuilt. Borders changed. But the damage remained. Cities were reshaped. Languages mixed. Bloodlines crossed. And England was never the same again. All of it began with one mistake. One king believed killing a legend would erase a threat. Instead, he created something far more dangerous. A memory. Because armies can be defeated, kings can be overthrown, empires can collapse. But stories survive. Ragnar's death did not end his power. It multiplied it. And long after his bones turned to dust, his name continued to march across history. Not with swords. Not with ships. But with fear. And that is the true legacy of Ragnar Lothbrok.